Well, the Ironskull's Boyz are done. And with only a little more than, say, 5 hours, I think, for 4 models, I think they turned out really pretty well. From last time, I talked about how I did the skin and how I was working on the armor. I didn't really do any rust on the armor. A bunch of people in the comments said that they didn't really feel like that there would be time for rust too much in an orc's life because they're constantly fighting, which, I kind of agreed with, and I thought, yeah, I think that's not a bad idea. I did put some stuff on the axes and some of the metal in the process of doing it. Not so much splotchy or rust, but just kind of almost like the color that you get on metal before rust. So there's a bunch of sepia in certain spots on some of these models to make the axes not just silver and black, but also have a bit of a warmer hue to it, a warmer skew. The big main guy, I messed with his cloak a lot more. It's subtle. I didn't want to go crazy with how I kind of dirtied up and modeled the cloak, but I did definitely add some browns and some other kind of warmer colors and sort of do a little bit of splotching here and there on that thing. The fur up on the shoulder there, that's definitely a lot of wet blending that I got to mess with and did a bunch of that, and then a little bit of wash and a little bit more wet blending and then some dry brush and that kind of stuff because I wanted it to have I wanted to go from like a white to a brown kind of a fade, like it's some sort of like, I don't know, like maybe the underside of a wolf pelt, how they're usually lighter in the tummy than they are on the other parts or whatever. The bases are all basically just a very simple kind of terracotta color with a brown wash because I didn't want it to look like they were standing on Mars necessarily, but I did want it to be a very warm kind of clay color that would kind of separate itself quite nicely from the green skin. I did go through and do some highlighting on the green skin parts from the last time, and I painted the teeth and I painted the tongues and that kind of stuff. All the weapons, I decided, like I said, not to do the rust kind of effect, but I did do definitely some beat up and some sort of dirtier looking weapons. And I also went through on some of these guys who have like extra patches of metal, and I painted those patches of metal in a different color. I generally went with red, because orcs and red, they kind of dig that. But I wanted to have some sort of standout so it wasn't just like, here's another silver, patch basically of metal on top of your armor. We'd make those stand out, maybe look like they were taken from other people's armor perhaps and then used to patch your own armor. I could see orcs kind of wanting to do that kind of stuff. The orc with the big metal chin, I wanted to keep the face part that held that metal chin to what I assume is a hole where his lower jaw used to be. I wanted to keep that leather. I wanted to keep that so that it was like like this whole thing was strapped onto his head. I've seen other people paint them where it's more of a metal, but then they do something different with that jaw piece. I wanted the jaw piece to be definitely like a very silver metal, and then go and get just leather straps basically to attach it to his head. I mean, when you look at it, they look like leather straps, at least to me. So it worked out pretty well that way. Painted all the little skulls. Some of these guys have got a little bit of skulls going on. Some friends, Ironskull's Boyz, I guess makes sense. But they turned out pretty well. Again, like I said, I pushed it pretty fast because I did not want to spend a ton of time on these models. Planning ahead and thinking about it, I guess I may have not taken that into consideration as far as time was concerned. I didn't say, well, also I spent this much time thinking about it. It's not like I sat for hours and thought about, well, what should I do? But I did spend some time, when you've got some extra time when you're waiting in line at the bank or, I don't know, whatever you do at the grocery store or, just thinking about, well, should I do it this way or should I do it that way? Plenty of that time was also spent here at the hobby table thinking, for several minutes and going, well, maybe I should try this or that. But a lot of the ideas that I had, I shared with you in the past 2 videos about this, in this hobby project vlog. They were a lot of fun to paint. I'm really looking forward to painting my orcs for my 40k kill team. I'm going to be starting to build them very soon, as a matter of fact. And I just kind of like working in orcs at this point, just because it can be very quick. 5 hours, roughly, a little bit over 5 hours for 4 models. for a lot of people, I think is pretty quick. And this is not Golden Demon territory, but this is definitely, you put them down on the Shadespire board and play, and they look, I think, pretty good. So it worked out pretty well. Planning ahead and thinking about, like, well, what am I going to do? How am I going to try this? Understanding up front what you plan on doing also affects how you're going to prime, the washes you're going to use, the order in which you do things. The reason that I did so much dry brushing before I even started with the skin was because I knew if I wanted to be free with my dry brushing, I was going to get silver onto the skin parts. So if I do that, get the armor silvered all up and get silver all over the places where I don't want it, and then go back and paint the parts to kind of cover that, like the skin, any silver gets covered by the green, it worked out really well that way. If I would have primed them green because they're orcs, then I would have had to have been much more careful with the dry brushing of the armor because I wouldn't have wanted to get silver onto the green. In this situation, since there's not a lot of green showing, getting silver into the areas that will be green is fine because I'm not putting the green on until after the silver is done. Thinking about those things when you're trying to figure out exactly how you want to attack a small project like this is super helpful because it can A, help you speed things up quite a bit, and B, help it so you don't have to go back and do parts over again. So honestly, I have a bunch more Shadespire and also Night Vault models to paint, but I think that the next Hobby Progress vlog is going to be something else. I've got some ideas, but I haven't completely come up with it yet. I've got plenty of projects, Lord knows, but I haven't quite figured out exactly what the next one's going to be. But when I do, you'll see it here on the channel. If you've got any questions or comments or anything like that, put them down below. I like doing these kind of like multi-part things, talking more about why I did it as opposed to showing you, oh, this is how you paint pants. You know what I mean? I think that there's a lot more use in me explaining why, with my experience, such as it is, I've thought to go this way as versus that way. I think that can help you, specifically if you're trying to either paint faster or just get started as a beginner. So yeah, down in the comments below if you got any questions or comments, and we'll see what the next Hobby Progress vlog brings in the coming month or so.